Jordan Fabian is a White House reporter for The Hill. He joins us now. Okay, talk about harsh criticism here, Jordan. You've got these two Senate Republicans coming forward, but you heard Norah O'Donnell's question. How many other Republicans there feel the same way but can't really articulate that?
Well, from what we're hearing, Rena, it's a lot. There's a number of Republicans in that conference who feel the same way as Senator Flake, but they're staying in the Senate, and they might have to face voters who support President Trump for re-election either next year or 2 years down the road. And they're really unwilling to speak out, and I think they're just trying to get along and work with the president to accomplish some of the policy goals like tax reform that the Republican Party has been wanting to pass for a very long time.
And so Flake says that he thinks that there will be other Republicans who will speak out, but now he and Corker, they're obviously not running for re-election. Republicans in Tennessee and Arizona voted for President Trump. Do you think somehow this is a warning for other GOP incumbents? Don't speak out or you'll face the price.
Absolutely, and I think that's what the president and also his spokespeople are trying to do by hitting back against people like Bob Corker and Jeff Flake so hard, is to discourage sort of rebellion amongst Republicans, sending them a warning that, A, we'll hit you hard in the media, and we're going to send that same message to the voters that you might have to face very soon.
So Flake's primary challenger, Kelly Ward, she's backed by Steve Bannon. But how does this energize Bannon's war on the GOP establishment? And is this what Arizona voters want, the Republicans out there? Was Flake just not conservative enough?
Well, Steve Bannon's claiming victory for Senator Flake's decision not to seek re-election, but he might be getting ahead of himself. There are some Republicans who I've spoken to who believe that now that Senator Flake is out of the picture, Republicans actually might have a better chance of holding on to that seat because they can put forward someone like State Treasurer Jeff DeWitt or former Representative Salmon into that seat, someone who's maybe more palatable to Trump voters and who might be a stronger nominee than Kelly Ward to go against the well-funded Democratic candidate in that race, Kristen Sinema. So this is not over yet. So it might be one of these mission accomplished moments for Steve Bannon.
So what about the Democratic challengers, Jordan? Is this sort of does this somehow give them an in this longtime red state?
Yeah, well, just take Kristen Sinema, for example. You know, Arizona is a state that has long been held by Republicans, but because of demographic changes could be moving toward a purple state. Democrats are realizing this, and they've pumped her campaign full of cash. They're riding a lot of hopes on her that she could take back that seat for Democrats and not only help them eat away at the Republican majority in the Senate, but flip some of these red states to blue or purple. So this is going to be one of the biggest stories heading into next year's midterms.
Yeah, I thought it was a fascinating state going into the elections last time. It'll be even more fascinating next year. I want to ask you also at the same time, we know the president met with Senate Republicans Tuesday. He described it as a love fest with standing ovations. We haven't heard a lot from other GOP senators who were at that lunch talking about it. So Corker previously slammed it. This was just a photo op. So what actually came out of that visit, the president's visit to Capitol Hill?
Well, senators were telling us, Rena, that it was actually much more cordial than the bomb throwing that we saw ahead of the meeting with Senators Corker and Flake. You know, the president urged them to move on with tax reform and to pass that, and to also help them confirm his nominees to courts around the country. But there were some really Trumpy moments, too. Like he asked senators for a straw poll, asked them for a show of hands for who he should select as Fed chairman, something that I think a past president might not do, but something that Trump, with his off-the-cuff style, would do in front of a bunch of senators.
And do we have a sense over where that straw poll went and where they're leaning, at least that crowd?
Senators were keeping their lips zipped, but I think the rest of Washington is on edge about who's going to pick to fill that role.
That's certainly a position many want to know who will fill that. But on taxes, the House Ways and Means Committee chairman is suggesting that he could introduce changes to the 401k plan. It's a direct contradiction actually to the president's tweet. Should we expect a fight on this?
Sure. I mean, this is really the central issue. This is what makes tax reform so tough. The way this is structured, the Republicans want to make these tax cuts and pay for them with deductions, but these deductions are very politically sensitive. Some people call them loopholes, some people call them tax breaks for people, and the 401k issue is a perfect example of that. If you take away a pay for, it might anger deficit hawks, and you might lose votes there, and it might make it very difficult for members of Congress to stomach and vote for this plan. So while Trump and leadership are bullish on the prospects for tax reform, I think it shows that they have a lot of work to do to get the votes.
And at the same time, there's several senators who've spoken out against the president, all eventually got in line to block a rule allowing Americans to band together for class action lawsuits against banks. I was fascinated by this. Vice President Pence was actually a tie-breaking vote in this. Is that a sign that Republicans are not just out of step with each other, as we've seen in recent events? Can they really band together when needed?
Absolutely. I think this is a sign, a perfect example of how sometimes we might read a little too much into what these intra-party fights that happen in the Republican Party. The Republicans have for years believed that they want to deregulate the financial industry. They're hungry to reverse President Obama's regulations on the environment and a lot of different areas, and they're going to go through with that no matter what their quarrel is with President Trump. So even though there's all this fighting and all this drama, they still might be able to get some things done in the months ahead.
Okay, that's good, because the clock is certainly ticking for folks who want to see if the president wants to get a legislative win there. Jordan Fabian, appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.